We're going to create the gallery image with your sculpture in. So first you need to create a new piece of paper to work on, a digital piece of paper. So if you click at the top, print, and then A4, this will be the same size of an A4 piece of paper, and then I turn it landscape and I press create. So there you've got your base background layer. Then I drag in my gallery image and I resize that using the little, pulling it in and out with the little squares at the sides. And then when I'm happy and I reposition it a little, I press enter and it turns off the transformation. Then I'm going to drag in the image of my sculpture, drag that onto top, and you can see it's starting to create several layers. I have the gallery layer and my sculpture layer, and I resize that to make it a little bit bigger for myself. Then I'm going to zoom in, so you can do that by either clicking the magnifying glass or holding Command and the plus and the minus to zoom in and out. Now I want to cut around my sculpture to create, so I get rid of the background. So I use the polygon lasso tool. So this kind of helps me create little straight lines to cut around my shape. So if you keep clicking every time you want to kind of do a new point, and it gradually goes around the edge of your shape. The more points you click, obviously the more kind of realistic cutout you'll get, the less it will be more angular, but I find this the best way of doing this quickly. So use this tool to go all the way around. And when you get back to the beginning point you started, where I started at the top by the circle, if you click it, you'll see a little circle come up, and it will, you'll have finished your complete cutout. So now that I've gone all the way around my shape, it will create this little kind of dotted line. I right click and then click select and mask. And this creates this, and this brings up this drop down box. You can play around with those things, but I just press OK. Then you are going to have to go back and click the layer mask image at the very bottom of the layers box, the rectangle with the square circle in, and it will create this, and you can move it around. One of the problems I have is that the circle at the top still has, it's not see-through, and if that was in a real gallery, I'd be able to see through it. So you need to kind of cut another shape out using the polygon lasso tool, and you kind of create a little area where you can kind of rub away. So I'm going all the way around again, just like I just did, until I get back to the point at the beginning. Then I right click. Oh, I don't need to right click actually, I can just go straight to my paintbrush, and then this is important, make sure that the black is forward, so you can use that little arrow to make sure the black's forwards, and then you can essentially paint away that layer, and it's actually revealing the background image. So you'll see in a minute when I move around my sculpture that you can actually, that is now actually see-through. I play around with the settings at the top, so obviously the opacity was a little bit light, so I've put it 100% opacity and it's rubbed it all away. You can play with lots of different types of brushes, the size, the hardness and things like that. You can experiment, there's loads and loads of different ones. You can even make your own brushes if you really want to. So then I click the little arrow at the top and go to select and deselect, and then you'll see now when I click on the back onto the original image, I can move it around and you can see through it. So now I want to kind of play around with the size and the shape and maybe the perspective of my sculpture. If you click edit and then click transformation, but you can also get to this by clicking Command and T, and then this allows you to transform your shape. If you right click, you can do more than just kind of scale it. You can play with the perspective, and again, if you just play around with the points, you can kind of put it, change it to the correct perspective of your space. So you're going to have to do that by eye. It can be quite difficult. You can distort it and skew it, and there's lots of different things. You can also rotate it there and flip the image and things like that to have a play around. You might think that the sculpture looks better the other way around in your space. So I think I'm quite happy with the size and the scale because I want it to be quite monumental in my area. But I'm also now got to think about the lighting of my image. I need to make sure I'm only editing the area of the sculpture, not the whole image. So if you right click the masked area and click intersect selection, you will create that little dotted line around your sculpture image, which will allow you only to affect that area. So you can see me playing with the brightness and the contrast. But I also need to make it black and white. You can see I've done it wrong there. So for some reason it wants me to reselect that area. So go down to intersect mask with selection and then change it to black and white, and you can see it's only made the sculpture black and white rather than the whole image. Now I kind of want to merge all those layers I've been playing around with because they get a little bit confusing. So if you hold Command and select them all and right click and click merge layers, they will all become one layer and you'll just get your little sculpture. Now I want to play around with the subtleties of the lights and darks to kind of get a sense of where the lighting is, and again right click, select pixels now, and it kind of puts a little line around all the edge because I only want to, you know, play around with the sculpture, not the whole image. So it's just making sure that that's the area I want to kind of play with. So then you've got the dodge and the burn tool. So the dodge is obviously brightening things up, and the burn tool makes things darker. So it's quite a bright, brilliant white space. So I'm kind of going over and kind of, you know, highlighting areas, thinking about the direction of the light. It's very kind of from the ceiling down, isn't it? And again, you can play around with the exposure, and so you can be really bright or just very, very subtle. You know, you can be very, very delicate with these tools, but you can also be very harsh with them. You can play with the different type of brush that you're applying this dodging and burning. So essentially, this tool is essentially brightness and contrast, but at a point rather than affecting the whole image. So you could use this on other things, you know, other images that you may have, and you want to kind of just subtly highlight particular areas.